Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Bubbles, the podcast about comics, anime, pop culture, movies, all that entails. I, of course, am Terry Williams, and the man next to me is Mr. Ben Dunn.
Hello, everyone. Greetings. Yes, I'm Ben Dunn, and we are here to talk about all sorts of stuff.
All sorts of stuff. So first, why don't we start with a quick little recap of this weekend? Both of us ended up in Houston at Comic IndieCon. What'd you think of it?
I enjoyed it. It was fantastic. It was great meeting a lot of creative people there. It was an unusual convention in that there were no what you would call normal comic show dealers. It was all creatives, and hadn't been in one of those in quite a while.
Yeah, that was actually really interesting to me, the fact that there were no vendors as far as comic vendors or really any vendors of, at all. It was all just creators, which was really, really cool to see. I met a lot of great creators, some really good artists, some great stories being told. One family that did comics together, mom, dad, and kids, which I thought was really kind of cool and different. Of course, you were there doing your thing. And again, walking around and seeing you guys just, all you artists, just like a quick sketch, and it's like amazing piece of art. And I'm like, I wish I could do that.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was. Then the other big thing from this week is Godzilla -1 came out and apparently is a raving success.
Yeah, very unusual for a Godzilla film. I mean, yes, we had the legendary version of Godzilla in their quote-unquote monsterverse. And they've been doing quite well. But comparatively speaking, they spend, hundreds of millions of dollars on those versions of Godzilla. But apparently this Japanese version of Godzilla, the budget was reportedly only $15 million.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's quite unusual. You know, this is really something that a lot of people are talking about, is not only how much of a critical success it seems to be, but how much it actually costs to make the film in comparison to standard large special effects driven movies.
Right. I think it's one of those that has, just because of Godzilla being the pop culture phenomenon that it's been for, 50, 60, 70 years, I guess.
1954.
Right. And, that was when I was a kid, Godzilla was it. If there was a Godzilla movie on, I'm all in. My mom knew, he's occupied for the next hour or however long the movie was, and I was good. And to see it progress the way it's progressed from because I was really excited when the Matthew Broderick version that came out back in, was that mid-90s, I guess? Mm-hmm. And then with the newer versions, each one has just gotten better and better as CGI gets better and that kind of thing. But this one looks, from everything I've heard, and I unfortunately haven't seen it yet. I plan to go either today or tomorrow, hopefully this week, to see it. The Godzilla is the main focus again, but apparently the acting is really good in this movie.
Well, I mean, I think the main reason they actually did this movie is because I think it's next year Godzilla will be selling its 70th anniversary.
I believe so.
Yeah, 70 years. I mean, that's a long time for any franchise to have lasted. I mean, who would have thought that a big guy in a giant rubber suit, in a black and white monster movie in 1954 would still be relevant today, and it really just comes down to how the Japanese treat Godzilla and how the West views Godzilla. I mean, originally Godzilla was meant to be an allegory for the atomic bomb, and I think that with this movie, I think they're trying to sort of reboot the whole Godzilla idea, and that they were going back to what made Godzilla such a mythical monster, that they were, but they also focused on the human element, which is something kind of unusual, because mostly the human element is something that we usually don't bother with in a Godzilla movie.
Right. That's kind of what I've seen with the last couple of Godzilla movies, from the Kong Godzilla with the little girl being, Kong's friend and that kind of thing and leading him. She was kind of the co-star of the movie, to the one before that, the two before that, I guess, with the dad, the dad losing his wife and all that, and the whole tale of their sorrow and how they hated Godzilla and that kind of thing, and then ended up, being Godzilla's basically the savior again. It's that whole dynamic with the, or at least for me, I like the dynamic of the the human characters along with Godzilla and how that plays and how they get along. And he's really not this just all-consuming monster that you would think.
Well, I know when I was a kid, that was all I wanted to go see was the monsters. I didn't care about the human element. The human element was actually kind of just fit in there to,
Sure.
to be there. Because I don't know if people would watch a 90-minute all monster Godzilla
Right.
movie,
Yeah.
but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's ever tried, so we don't know if that is even remotely possible. But
Right.
yeah, but it is interesting that's what people are talking about is Godzilla. I mean, who would have thought that a Japanese version of Godzilla, done today would resonate with so many people. I mean, it's just astounding that it really does come down to how well you write a story.
Right.
And I can jump in here and 100% agree. I'm a huge Godzilla fan, just like Ben. This was one of the best Godzilla movies I've ever seen. It was so good. It was probably the best action film I saw all year, and I was just astounded how good it was.
Really, and this is one of those. This one, if I'm correct, Josh, this was subtitled, correct?
Yes, it's
This was
subtitled.
fully subbed, which I loved. It
Yes,
was,
which is
fully in
another
Japanese. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing that this has had. I've heard nothing about that when they talk about this movie. Outside of me asking, was it subbed? No one's mentioned, oh, it was subbed, or I didn't like it because it was dubbed, or whatever. Because most people have they're either a sub or a dubbed version. So, but this one, no one said anything about it. So that tells me the movie is really good to carry its own.
Right.
Well, I mean, the idea, is that there's subtitled movies by general don't really do that well because, but I think in this instance, it actually is an advantage because when you have to read what they're saying, you have to pay attention.
Yep.
And that's the one thing that a lot of people are beginning to understand is that when you have to pay attention to them, you actually have to watch the movie. You don't ignore it or you get bored by it or anything else because if you want to see how the story progresses, you have to sit down and actually watch it and pay attention, which is, I think, a lot of movies nowadays really, it's a lot of flash and, a lot of moving colors and stuff like that. And it just doesn't seem to resonate with a lot of people these days, especially with some of the sound in some of these movies. They either get too loud, or you can barely hear what they're saying.
Right.
Yeah, and Godzilla, I will also say right off of Ben, you never go to see a Godzilla movie for the human element.
Oh no,
you're never there. You're here to see or Mothra or any of the gallery of monsters that are going to show up. But I will say this is probably the most poignant story they've ever had in a Godzilla movie. The human element is very, other than obviously the first Godzilla movie, but this movie is it's post-war Japan, like literally days after World War II ends. It's very, it's just very careful with the way that it portrays people, and it's pretty realistic, I would say, in some of their aspects. A lot of emotions running from people that were both in the war or experienced it, and you see those emotions come out when just another thing is happening to their country right after World War II happened. So
yeah,
quite liked it.
That sounds like one of those things that's universal. The human element. You want to try to create characters that anybody can identify with,
right?
That you can sympathize with, that you can root for. If you look at Godzilla, you could probably just replace Godzilla with just any natural disaster. If they had done this exact same story with an earthquake or a typhoon, or even if a bombing raid or something like that, and just substitute a Godzilla with something else, it still probably would have resonated and been, still people would have identified with the characters. And that's what I think makes it sort of universal in terms of the story elements are concerned.
Right. And maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I'm one of the only ones, but as a kid until now, I always rooted for Godzilla. Like, I never cared about
Same.
about everyone he killed. I didn't care. It's like,
it was just a matter of how many buildings he could destroy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was always about just go Godzilla.
And fighting the bad guy monster.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that with Godzilla Kong is kind of for most of my friends anyway, Kong is like the U.S. guy and Godzilla is the foreign invader or whatever how they view it. But I've always been a Godzilla guy. If it's Godzilla versus Kong, I'm rooting for Godzilla.
I'm rooting for Godzilla too.
Well, this is an interesting testament because, the fact of the matter is probably the guy who put it together. I don't remember his name is Yoshio something or another. Forgive me if I don't know. But he apparently probably did this movie with a singular vision in mind. And he probably had very little studio interference. I don't know that for a fact.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of parallels I'm noticing is that this is very similar to when Joker came out. When Joker came out, the creator, the guy who made the movie, do you remember who he was?
I do not.
Okay, well, he took a different approach to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't just do a standard Joker, movie. He decided to take the elements of what made that character and decided to go think outside the box and do something extremely different. I think the people who made this Godzilla film did the same thing. They basically took the concepts that were already there and decided to think outside the box and decide to do their own version of it while paying respect to the original source material.
Mm-hmm. Todd Phillips is the director of Joker.
Okay,
so
Todd
maybe
Phillips.
that's the one you're thinking of. But it's one of those, and I kind of agree with you in that with Godzilla has always seemed like a metaphor, so to speak, for either the war or some. Man, like you said, you could replace the Godzilla with some natural disaster and it would, like a volcano erupting or a tidal wave or whatever, and it would kind of have the same aura, I guess.
Yeah, he's a force of nature, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was looking for, force of nature.
Yeah. I think that, how do you compare, what do you think of the comparison between the legendary version and this version?
From what I've seen, I think I like this version a little better, and again, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I can't really say, but from the trailers and all of that I've seen, this version looks way more how I've always imagined Godzilla in my head looking. And I love the legendary version, don't get me wrong, but this one just seems more, I don't want to say lifelike, but pretty much lifelike. Like that's how my mental picture of Godzilla has always kind of been.
Yeah, I agree with you there for sure. So it's very interesting that the people are talking about a Godzilla movie. I mean, the fact of the matter is that short of the legendary version, most people have a common conception of Godzilla.
Yep.
And I think this broke all previous conceptions about what Godzilla can and can do. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, after 70 years of Godzilla movies, we probably had the complacency of seeing it all.
Yes.
It's like,
yep.
Oh yeah, well, he falls into certain tropes. It's predictable. I think this is a game changer as far as Godzilla is concerned.
I think so too, and I think it also shows from its success at the box office already, it shows how I think the movie market is changing, or our entertainment may be changing in general, to we're welcoming more foreign movies, more foreign films, more foreign producers to do movies, and they're really making some really good stuff. I mean everything from anime to live action films. I've watched a couple recently that were foreign films that are really good.
Well, I think the main distinction between a foreign film and what's made in current day Hollywood is that most foreign films are made with a singular creator, who has a singular vision. And he's basically an artist who's trying to create something that's what he considers, or he or she considers the story.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that a lot of stuff coming out of present-day Hollywood is corporate product.
Mm-hmm.
People are no longer focusing on the artist. They're focusing on the product.
Right.
And unfortunately, when you take that attitude of the product, then you've heard the old saying, too many cooks spoil the recipe. And that it pretty much applies to a movie.
Mhm.
You know, if you have too many people trying to drive too many different ideas and too many different agendas into a movie, then you lose all sight of what the movie is supposed to be about.
Yeah,
You know,
I agree with that.
and I think this might make a shift in the way people approach it. And that's why I say, you know, when I talk about Joker, you know, Joker was considered a throwaway film,
Hmm.
you know, by Warner Brothers. They said, oh, well, we had like a $50 million budget. You know, let's just let him do his thing and not bother. And look what happened. He created something unique and different and original. And it went on to be gross $1 billion, you know, on a $50 million budget. And I think Godzilla is sort of the same way. I mean, the $15 million budget is laughable in most Hollywood standards. You know, that's considered just a low budget independent film. You know, and the Japanese, or the people who created this Godzilla film, obviously knew, you know, what they wanted to do, and they paid respect to the original source material, and they set out to do the best film they could with the resources that they had, and that I think they pulled it off.
Yep. And on the backside of this, with the Godzilla movie, I'm hoping, in the craze around Godzilla, I'm hoping that affects some of the comics, because there's been some really good Godzilla stories, comics that people don't probably not really know about. I mean, I know most everyone knows that collects comics knows about the Marvel run back in the 70s, but then IDW did a lot of really good Godzilla stuff, and Dark Horse did some really good Godzilla stuff there for a while, with even Art Adams doing some of the artwork, some of the covers, which were really, really great.
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as you bring out Godzilla, I mean, have you seen the new Monarch TV series on the?
I've not seen it yet. Is it out yet?
Yes, it's out. There's like 3 or 4 episodes already. I
Okay.
did watch the first episode, and this is a perfect example of the difference between how the Japanese handle Godzilla and how the West handles Godzilla. You know, because in the first episode of Monarch, I mean, it was actually, I didn't care about any of the characters. I
Really?
didn't care about the I didn't care about the situation. I thought it was kind of dull and boring, you know. And I don't know how you can make a Godzilla or a monster. You know, they had the opportunity to do a lot of stuff with this series, and I just don't know if they understood the nuance of, you know, the kaiju films.
Right.
You know. I mean, it's that. Of course, it could get better as the series progresses. So we'll see what happens. You know. But yes, I think if you haven't, I'm going to go see it soon, so I will go ahead and finally get a chance to see it. I was waiting. Actually, I had wanted to go see it, but I was kind of waiting to see what, you know, the perception was.
Yes.
You know, I thought the trailer was really good, and I just, but I didn't know what the story was going to be about or how it was going to be presented. But apparently, people seem to love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely going to go see it this week sometime. Got to make room for that because it looks really, really good. And being the Godzilla fan that I am, I cannot wait.
Absolutely.
So the other big thing that's kind of taking the comic world by storm is an X-Men thing that I'm always interested in because I'm an X-Men fan, is the changing of some of the canon, I guess, for Nightcrawler's parents, or how that came about. And because we all, well, not everyone knows, but those of you that know the X-Men and Nightcrawler know that he is, he's been written a couple of different ways. I know that at one time he was thought to be like Mystique's brother or something like that. Then it came out to be that he was like her son, and now they're changing that to where he's still her son, but she became a guy to
Became
impregnate
his father and his mother.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so you can kind of a disconnect.
I haven't read an X-Men comic. I will be honest with you. I haven't read an X-Men comic since the 90s. So I have no idea what's going on with them. I don't even know how much continuity they're actually sticking to as far as the X-Men title is concerned. So I'm going to leave the expertise up to you. It just seems to me like this is a sort of a way to get attention, you know, like, and I'm not sure whether this is going to make much of a difference once it's said and done. But, you know, Nightcrawler's never been one of my favorite characters anyway. So whatever they want to do, it's Marvel. They can do whatever they want with their characters. So
yeah, it's kind of how I am. I mean, I love the X-Men, but Nightcrawler's never been one of those that I was just like, oh, that's my guy. He's there and he's part of the team, and he serves a role. I like the fact that he's misunderstood in that how his origin is. He was basically thought of as a demon where he was from and treated that way as an outcast and that kind of stuff, kind of thing that made him. But he's really this really good-hearted Christian person.
Yeah, I thought he was Catholic, wasn't he?
Catholic, yeah. I'm sorry, Catholic, yeah. So instead of Christian, I should have said religious, which is what I meant to say. But but now with this, it's just, to me, it looks like a money grab as far as like, let's do something to sell some books instead of let's do something that makes sense for the character. It is almost like a throwaway. And since the X-Men hit number 500, I've kind of been on board here and there, but it's been a hit and miss thing. The writing just doesn't seem to be what it was. They try to do these big interlocking stories with all of the titles because there are so many X-Men titles, which is one of the reasons I stopped collecting the X-Men at 500, is just because there was, between the Uncanny, which I was used to, the Jim Lee X-Men, which I was fine with, to being the Extreme X-Men, Amazing X-Men, to all these different scenarios of X-Men books, X titles. I was just like X-Force, X-Factor, Mutants. It just became like, I can't keep up. It's just too much. And they were taking the characters. Each character didn't have their one team affiliation. They were switching back and forth to different teams, and it just didn't. I didn't like it.
Well, what's fascinating to me is that they went this specific route. Instead of just revealing who the father was, they decided that they would be two female characters that would give birth. So this sort of implies the fact that two female characters can give birth to, can give birth, which biologically that's impossible. You know, I mean, other than artificial insemination or a surrogate. You know, so it I don't know what they're trying to say exactly with this story. Other than just trying to create some sort of shock value, or to just say, two women can have a kid, no problem. So it's one of those things where I just don't, I have to be skeptical as whether there's some sort of agenda behind it, or just a natural progression of the story. I mean, I've come to the point now where canon in comics, I mean, just no longer applies.
It doesn't. Yeah, absolutely.
It changes with the next writer.
Yes, it's rewritten so much that you just no longer. And again, I guess that's old man syndrome for me, because again, I'm used to when John Byrne and Claremont were on the X-Men, you knew what you were getting. Same with when George Perez was on whichever book he was on, you kind of knew what you were getting. Even you with Ninja High School, we knew what we're getting each month, or each issue we're getting. We kind of knew what to expect, not what to expect, but we knew what kind of writing, what kind of art we were getting.
That's a little different since I control.
Yeah,
I can tell the writer what is expected.
Right.
But in this case, I mean, Claremont was, of course, the guy who made the X-Men what they are. If it wasn't for him, I think X-Men probably would never have gotten to the heights and levels that it achieved.
100%.
But when he left, and other writers came in, that they decided, the writers who took over, tried to carry on his legacy, but then Marvel decided just to abandon canon altogether and just decided just do whatever sells books. That's basically what their attitude
Which is going back to the IndieCon that we were at. That's one of the refreshing things that I saw there, were that, at least for me, I've noticed how the big companies, Marvel, DC, even Image to a degree now, can, they have the characters, they can tell the writers kind of what they want. They can, if you submit something and say, no, we don't like this, we want to do this or whatever. Whereas with the independents, you guys can do what you want. It's this is how I want the character to be, and this is how the character is going to be.
Well, with the creator-owned project, is that you control every aspect of that project. It's just like in the movies, you have a singular vision of a person, and it usually turns out to be, better for it because you have that singular version. When you have different, people coming in, deciding that, well, the writer who did it before, I'm just going to ignore him. I'm just going to do my own, thing. And so it destroys whatever continuity the previous writer may have set up, because the new writer says, well, I'm taking over, so I'm going to put my imprint, on the story, and I'm just going to take it this direction, and that's where I think it causes a lot of confusion. I also think that when Marvel and DC both abandoned, Marvel more so than DC, abandoned legacy numbering and decided to create half a dozen to a dozen different X-Men, Spider-Man titles, that it created a lot of brand confusion. Nobody knew which X-Men title should I be reading.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And that's, I think, why they do those big dramatic crossovers, and every character has that big dramatic crossover event every year where you must read. It's not even a Marvel event anymore. Like Secret Wars was a Marvel Comics event. Now we're seeing just like Powers of X, House of X, which were just X-Men themed. You see the One More Day storyline with Amazing Spider-Man is just amazing that you have to, well, not amazing, a Spider-Man storyline that you have to read every Spider-Man book.
Well, now they're creating a Spider-Man family.
Yeah.
Okay, where you have all these characters who are, spun off from the original Spider-Man, just like the Batman family, and everything else. You got to have this sort of group of characters that people now have to invest their time and effort into in order to keep up what's going on.
And again, I think it all goes back to just right now, I think the industry is in a state of flux and they don't really know where to go. And they're just kind of, I think, grasping at, let's throw as much stuff out there that we can and see what sticks and see if this is going to draw readers in.
Well, the problem is that they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing is, what title do I start with? Which, if I want to get into X-Men, where do I start? It doesn't make any sense. I think that's one of the reasons why manga is taken off, is because you know where to start. You start at issue 1, and you just follow the progression from there. There's no such continuity in any of the American superhero comics because, it has been around for so long. It's hard for a new person to get into it in order to say, I want to get into it, but where do I start? Where do I start with X-Men number 1, or do I, because if you follow the original X-Men number 1, that ended what?
To me, it ended at 500.
Ago,
to me, it ended at 500. But it's one of those things where, this weekend at the con, I was talking to some different creators, and all of them had the same. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I would ask. My question would always be, "What got you into comics? Did you have a favorite character? That kind of thing." And I was surprised to find out that a lot of them, their favorite character or their gateway into comics, American comics, was through manga. A lot of them were manga guys who, and you can tell there were a couple of books that I bought that the style, you can definitely tell it's manga stylized.
Well, the fact that manga has sort of taken over the comic industry shows that there is still a huge demand for people to want to read comics. The thing about it, it's all about the content. If you don't create content that people are interested in, they're not going to read it. And unfortunately, with the primarily the American superhero comic industry, they're not creating content that's attracting new readers. They're just placating the readers they have that are growing older, and they're not passing on the tradition of American superhero comics to the next generation, because the next generation is reading manga. So when they grow up, they're going to pass that. They're going to pass their habit on to their, to their kids. And they're going to grow up reading manga, and then American superhero comics will become a thing of the past.
I'm even seeing more and more people come when I'm at a show. They come in and ask me if I have any manga or if I have any anime. Even the books that were, I guess they're manga, but they've been converted to American stylized comics, such as, Sailor Moon had some. There's a lot of the Viz comics that are American stylized comics, but it's a manga character. And I don't know, my knowledge isn't as good as I want it to be, and that I'm getting into it more, but I don't know if that's, if the Viz selection, that kind of stuff, is just manga that's already existed and they just made it into an American stylized comic, or if it's actually new stories that are being told.
I'm not familiar with any
Yeah, because there was like
adaptation of manga, because
Really?
my
Okay.
understanding is that Sailor Moon had a manga, so they did
Okay.
reprint that.
okay, I bet that's what it is then.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I think that I know that during the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
they did some adaptations of anime into American comics,
Right.
like
Okay.
Metabots. And,
Yes.
things, Digimon, things
Mhm.
like that. Because I'm not sure whether they actually had any manga. They might have. They probably did, because Japanese make manga of everything. They either probably couldn't get the license to the manga, or they decided to do their own version of the anime that they were airing, so that it fits more closely to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I do know they did do adaptation in the 90s. I'm not sure they do them now, because they have just the source material.
Right.
But
I haven't seen any of the newer stuff. There's, like I just think of stuff like One Punch Man, things like that made a huge impact. It's like it was a free comic book giveaway on Free Comic Book Day, and now it's like a $70 book if you go to try to buy it
well,
somewhere.
surprisingly, the thing about it is that yes, among manga readers, One Punch Man and is very popular, but for the general audience, for the vast majority of people, they don't know who One Punch Man
Right.
is.
Yeah.
If they ever did a movie, and it was widely successful, then people would probably know who he is. But until that happens, characters like that will remain pretty obscure. But like, for instance, the recent Netflix One Piece, that became humongously popular.
Yes.
So now a lot of people they know who One Piece is now, and so much
Right.
so that there was a balloon in the Macy's parade of One Piece.
Really?
Who would have thought?
I didn't even notice.
Who would have
Wow.
thought? And so manga is making headway, but in order for it to become really, truly part of the national pulp culture, I think it needs to either be a movie or TV series that just seems to resonate. Now, of course, they have failures, like Cowboy Bebop was a huge failure, but it was hugely popular among anime and manga fans.
Right.
But the adaptation was horribly done. So,
Do you think they will do or bring back possibly things like the Mangaverse with Marvel and stuff like that, where they like you were so inspirational in doing?
Personally, I think it's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
I mean, they may just maybe out of desperation, bring it back, but it doesn't seem to fit into their current offerings at the moment.
Right.
I mean, they have done manga versions of their characters. I mean, they've done a lot of manga versions of their character, but I think those are primarily aimed at the Japanese market and not to the American market.
Right, because there's even some, which I found them, there's some manga versions of Wolverine and Iron Man in, it's like an anime series that are actually pretty decent. So, yeah, that's kind of different. I've just been noticing that it seems like there is a definite wheel turn to more manga.
Well, I mean, I hate to say this, but the thing about the Japanese is that they're very, focused, on things. I mean, just like the car market. I mean, I sometimes use this analogy a lot, but in the 70s, when Japanese cars started to come over, Americans didn't take them seriously. They just thought they were just, puny little foreign-made Japanese cars. But the Japanese, they showed that they could create a high-quality product for a very low price. And then people started to gravitate toward Japanese cars.
Right.
And with manga was, manga goes back as far as the early 80s, that people started to see manga, on some form or fashion. And it was during that time that it was considered niche, sort of out there. No one took it seriously. I mean, Anarchy Press did manga. Eclipse Comics did manga. Very few people did manga. And it took 20. But the thing about Japanese, they played the long game. They kept at it, people started discovering just how good they were, and then all it took was, I think, a sort of what do you call a certain arrogance on the American comic book industry to think that they could never be beaten by any type of foreign competitor. You know, that now they become humbled by the very thing that they, laughed at and ignored for the longest time.
True. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I just tie all that back into like we started with the whole Godzilla -1 being such a hit. It just seems like there is now way more of a foreign impact on the American, the Western society as far as movies, just entertainment in general.
The thing about it is whether we learn from this.
Right.
Okay, and the thing about it is that, I'm sure there are filmmakers out there saying, how the heck did they pull this off? How the heck did they spend $15 million on this movie? The thing about it was that they had Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that should have told them this is what you need to do.
Yep.
You could make a movie for very little money, and if you do a good story with good characters that resonates with people, then your chances of making a huge, have a huge payoff is there. The thing about it is they just don't learn.
Yep. I agree 100%. Well, that's really cool. That will make another episode in the books for us. This is getting, I actually enjoy this a lot. It's a way to let my inner nerd out, and hopefully you guys enjoy this as much as I do in sitting and talking with Ben about the happenings in comics, anime, pop culture, that kind of stuff. If you do like what you hear and what you're seeing, please go hit the like, subscribe button. Let us know what you think. You can always follow us at Beyond the Bubbles. You can follow Ben at his socials, which are...
I'm on Facebook. I'm at benduncomics.com. I'm on X. I'm on Instagram, on TikTok, all those various... I'm not hard to find.
Yeah, so you can find us. And please go and follow us, like us, subscribe. Tell us what you think, what you want to see. And again, we are doing this for us, but we do it for you. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.